It's Aaron Katersky from ABC News, and we're joined today by Jenny Sanford, the South Carolina First Lady, and author of Staying True, her memoir about her husband's infidelity and how she has been able to deal with it. And, Ms. Sanford, it's good to see you. The book paragraph that so strikes me on the initial read is the part when he has just landed from Argentina, Governor Mark Sanford, and he's telling you about his encounter with his mistress, and he says everything's good.
It was surreal. I thought to myself, what's good about this? And I wasn't angry. I was still in shock. I mean, I hadn't talked to him in 2 weeks, so I hadn't heard his voice. And I was hopeful for a little more than that.
Was he delusional?
You know, clearly he was lost. I mean, and that day coming back, I'm not so sure he really was fully aware of what he was coming back to. So, yeah, he was, I think his head was still in Argentina.
The book, to me, seems so far, anyway, to read. You don't come across angry, although certainly there's some anger there, but there seems to be a bit of empathy almost.
You know, I'm not angry. That doesn't mean I haven't had anger, but more hurt. You know, we had a great partnership, I think, in many respects. But I wanted to really, in some respects, understand what happened and not take it as a personal, you know, as a personal affront to me, so that I can move on peacefully. Does that make sense? And you know, the challenges in the political world are significant, and the challenges for somebody like this who actually stuck to his guns for a long time are significant. And I watched him over time focus very hard on the things that mattered to him, which were his political views and his conservative political philosophy. And he stayed true to those. And sometimes that's hard. You know, too often in our political world, we see people go along to get along. So I admired him for what he did in his political world. Unfortunately, it took a great toll. Now I know it took a great toll on the side of his values and things that I think at the end of the day actually matter more.
What about your role and that of the political wife? Because your circumstances have certainly inspired some conversation about that particular world. What do you make of the political spouse role that you were sort of brought into? You know, I think there's a lot of in any strong marriage where somebody, whether it's a chief executive or a politician or a high-ranking politician or a high-ranking banker, you know, a spouse does have a role to play in terms of supporting a strong career like that. And I have never shied from that. I've always had an old-fashioned view of marriage in general, and have had no qualms whatsoever in this stage of our lives in being focused mostly on our family and raising our children and supporting my husband at the same time. So I make no qualms about that. The First Lady just adds a little something to that. So it added more demands on my time, even while he had great demands on his time. It's a valid function, though, to continue to support your husband, I think. What do you make of the reaction to how you carried yourself through this whole episode? Because it seems as if you've been praised for not standing by him and speaking out in a different way.
Right. You know, I think I don't know exactly why I struck a chord, but that's why I wrote the book. I clearly have connected with a number of women who have been through either similar situations or know of somebody else who has. And, you know, this book is not meant to be proscriptive, to say you must stand by somebody or you must not, or here's when you should divorce or here's when you shouldn't. But it recognizes, I think, that marriage is difficult and life is difficult and things get thrown your way sometimes that you don't expect. And it's more important, I think, in my mind, that you learn to understand them and take the challenges in life and grow through them and learn from them without having them rip you up necessarily or change who you are. And my hope is that some tidbits in this book will help other women who find themselves either in this situation or in something else that's difficult, where they feel they can't go on. And, you know, how do you stay true to the things that matter to you? How do you work in your lifetime to cultivate your friendships, your relationships with your family, your God, your faith? You know, how do you instill character? How do you maintain character and build character? These are things that you can't just rest on, but you need to constantly feed and fuel and nurture.
And what comes through in the book is that women have a choice.
Yes.
That you were not stuck playing a part.
No, I never was stuck, and I never let the role of First Lady or campaign manager, none of those ever took over my identity. I was always Jenny first, and I always knew what I was focused on. And even through the 6 months leading up to the press conference, I did everything I could to save the family, to wake him up, to do what I felt was the right thing to do. But once he went anyway, despite my, my urging him not to or asking him not to, things changed a little bit. And it became important for me to stand up for the sake of my boys, to say, you don't do this. And if you treat your wife this way, you lose her.
Have you ever had conversations with other women who have been in similar circumstances?
Well, certainly since June, I've got all sorts of people now who, some of whom I've known for years and never knew they'd been through a situation like this, but they were able to reconcile. Others of whom, I've never known, and they've emailed me or called me. So, yes, it's amazing how many women have been through situations like this. And many of them have, suffered through and rebuilt their marriage and made things better. Others have, gone on and moved on happily. So, others were having a hard time getting over the anger and learning how to forgive, which I'm a big fan of, not only just learning how to forgive, but practicing it and working on it in little things in life so that it becomes easier in the big things.
You've forgiven Mark?
I have fully forgiven him. Reconciliation is different from forgiveness. So, yes, I have. And again, back to what we talked about earlier, I could see a little bit how the political world took such a toll on him. And so maybe there's a sense of understanding on my part that somehow he became empty in other ways. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it easier for me to forgive. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I'm curious if you watched. Did you ever see Zelda Spitzer standing by Elliot or Elizabeth Edwards by John or Hillary Clinton by President Clinton?
I've seen various. Yeah.
Did any of that ever say, "Wow, I'm in that," or did your situation feel different?
It's funny, having been in the political world for so long, not being the politician, but being still in the world, you do have to pay attention to the image out there, but you do have to always remember who you are. And you can't do something just for an image. You have to do something that's right by you if you want to go to bed at night and live with yourself. And so, I don't know, it was just the right thing for me, which doesn't mean it's right for everybody else, but the right thing for me when he came back from Argentina was to not stand by him. And then the right thing was to put out a statement that explained, and the statement I put out was not a soundbite, but it was an honest statement of what I expect marriage to be and, what I needed if we were to reconcile and what was important to me, our children, my faith.
Jenny Sanford, thanks so much. The author of Staying True, the South Carolina First Lady's memoir about divorce and reconciliation and now forgiveness of her husband, the governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford. I'm Aaron Katersky, ABCNewsRadio.com.